It'd be a wonderful thing.
Cool. I think I know most of you, but if you don't know, I actually I own my own, used to be a CBD store, now it's really more a hemp-derived cannabinoid store. So Claire and I have been talking about this for a while. I did reach out to one of my suppliers to get some statistics. They're also a lobbyist. So we'll talk about what hemp is, what the difference between hemp and marijuana is, what the laws are looking like, and we'll talk a little bit about, most specifically in retail, if you've got clients, because it's tricky. It's tricky to navigate. It's tricky for both the tenants and for the landlords. But we'll kind of talk through that. And then I did at the end I did some frequently asked questions. So it is casual, but chances are one of the questions you want to ask, except for Andrew, because he'll be a smart ass. At the end, you might, it's probably on there because it's kind of things that we hear all the time.
What do you see today?
Okay, in 2018, the hemp was made legal by the 2018 Farm Bill, or called the Agricultural Improvement Act. And basically that bill expired in September of 2023. In November, they decided to extend it, and there is an amendment to ban hemp-derived cannabinoids, which is basically everything that most of us in Texas are selling. It's interesting because it was submitted by an Illinois representative, which marijuana is legal in Illinois. So basically now marijuana and hemp are fighting each other, which is interesting because you think like it's the same thing. So that's we'll get more into that. Key provisions, you can read all this. Obviously, it basically regulates it. It does allow for state and tribal authority to have their own framework. But I highlighted number 2, and that's really when we get later on why I can sell the things I can sell and why you see so many retail stores popping up and why they're being able to do this business. Because it says THC concentration. It's actually specifically more Delta 9 THC concentration is no more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis. It doesn't talk about anything else other than Delta 9. And again, that's not the exact verbiage. I just ChatGPT help me with this. But the actual law does say Delta 9 specifically. There are over 100 cannabinoids in both the marijuana and hemp plant. It only calls out Delta 9, which that's why you're seeing Delta 8, Delta 10, HHC, THCA, THCP, all these other cannabinoids, because the federal law says it has to have less than 0.3% Delta 9. I'm going to try not to get too granular, but it kind of tells a story as to why we can do what we can do. In 2019, House Bill 1325 was passed in Texas. It basically says the exact same thing as the federal bill, and it was signed in 2019. Another note, every 2 years, the Texas legislature goes into session. They will go again in January, and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has already instructed the Senate to really look into banning all of these intoxicating cannabinoids, even some CBD. And you're going to see that in the news, and everybody's going to get scared. He gave them 15 pages of things to work on. It's at the bottom of page 13. So it certainly isn't a priority. Well, you're going to hear a lot of news about it, but we have more important things to worry about than soccer moms eating a gummy for pain kind of thing. But they're going to try and scare us, and they're going to do their best to make me nervous for the next year. Again, key provisions here, it basically is number 1. Really, that's what it copied the federal bill exactly. One thing to note, the Texas Department of Agriculture was tasked, but in order to get a hemp license, you have to go through the Department of State Health Services. They regulate controlled substances and consumer protection. So, and we'll talk about later, but if you have a client that wants to open a store, they will have to get a retail hemp license. If they want wholesale, it would be a consumable hemp license, or if they want to farm, that's also so there's licensing for all of these different elements. All right, hemp versus marijuana. Now Andrew can get very scientific, but in a nutshell, and for this group, the really big difference is how much Delta 9 is in it. The hemp plant is grown to have has to have less than 0.3% to be classified as hemp. If it has any more than that, it is called marijuana. Whether it's grown differently, but that really is the biggest thing. Hemp traditionally has more CBD, and it's really much more for industrial products, but hemp can be converted to marijuana by lighting, by basically heating it. So here are the similarities, and again, we'll go over this because that I think there's this thing that they're two different plants. They're both cannabis sativa. They both contain all of the cannabinoids. So there's over 100 of them. They both contain all of them. Hemp has high CBD, low THC, and vice versa on marijuana. And again, you can see the similarities. I'm not going to read all of this, but at the bottom, they're interchangeably in some uses because they pretty much are the same thing. They're just grown for different reasons. So the economic impact in Texas. So I reached out to a supplier of mine. They're out of Austin. It is a veteran-owned, but he really is a lobbyist. He's basically, this company's fighting all the battles across the country. So they had commissioned an agency to do a report for them last year. It cost them $50,000, so they weren't ready to do one quick for me. So these numbers are old, but it's going to show you how big it is and why if hemp were to go away in Texas, it would be devastating to a lot of people. So in 2022, it was estimated at being over $8 billion. That's one of the reasons why it's going to be very, very difficult for them to ban it because it's too much money. 3.3 billion was derived from, so it says derived from CBD and converted cannabinoid retail sales. That's everything else, right? You can convert other cannabinoids you can convert CBD to THC by, again, heating it. 836,000 came from manufacturing and 3.8 billion came from wholesale and distribution. Again, as of 2 years ago, it was 50,000 workers and an excess of 1.6 billion in annual wages. Obviously, this hemp company is putting this together, so when they have to, they'll do another one for next year when they have to fight it to show the economic impact on the state of Texas if hemp were to go away. So again, from a real estate standpoint, obviously we have agricultural land, which is still very small. There's a reason it actually declined a little bit. Industrial, warehouse for manufacturing and wholesale distribution, and then retail, which I'm going to talk most about because obviously that's what I'm familiar with, and that's probably where most of us may find a client or a landlord. So again, these numbers are a little bit, they're a couple years old. One thing about agricultural land is at the bottom, you can see it was about a $17 million business. There's more demand in Texas for hemp than enough farmers, so we are getting it from a lot of other states, which is terrible because we should be able to grow it here. And you can see it's not, obviously, when you look at acres per growers, they're not using all their farmland to grow hemp or their buildings to grow hemp. Obviously, it's just a piece of their business. But on a side note, that this is very interesting. So Texas banned, in 2020, banned the growing, manufacturing, or selling of smokable hemp. Okay, well, I have a store, and so basically it was so silly because you could sell it. I could sell it as long as it wasn't marketed to smoke. So I could say, well, it's potpourri or for baking. Still, I mean, right? In 2020, the Texas Supreme Court upheld that ban on smokable hemp except for retailers. So I can sell it. Nobody in Texas. I can't just get it from anybody in Texas considered smokable. So some of these things are so silly, right? And that's why it's just such a weird gray area.
Melanie,
yes.
Sorry to bother you.
Yeah.
Forgive my. What is the difference between him and the other one?
What's the other one?
Well,
marijuana?
yes.
The amount of delta 9 THC that's in the plant.
So if it's over 3%,
If it's over
0.3%.
0.3%.
3%.
It's marijuana.
It's marijuana.
Okay.
not hemp.
Okay.
So there's only 3,300 acres in hemp production.
Now, yes, well, yeah, 33, 59, and I think it went down, and I think a lot of the farmers, I think because they knew this was coming. It was in litigation for a bit, and then the Supreme Court held it up, but that they can't manufacture it or they can't grow it for it to be smokable. So so a lot of the companies went to Oklahoma to where they're, so where they could get it mass. And so it was just, I think it ended up, a lot of them kind of just said, and I don't know the exact process that a farmer has to go through, but it's certainly more extensive than, and they have to test it. Every batch has to be tested, and that's going to get pricey.
Well, I know the state of Texas had given out some licenses in the beginning to grow.
Yeah, no, there are,
Because-
yeah, there's.
Because I have a friend of mine who actually has one.
Yeah, no, there's, in 2022, it's saying that there were 769 growers in Texas. There is, but it is going to be a little pricey because you do have to test every single batch to make sure it's legal both federally and in the state of Texas.
Now, at one time, the issue was when we were talking, I know in Washington County, give you an example. And no, we're not growing hemp or marijuana.
You should, hey, you should.
Or winterwood yet. When we were talking to some of the folks in
What are
Washington
you
County,
talking about?
they said that their
I want to
problem
straighten their line.
was, they weren't gonna be policing it in these smaller counties because they didn't have the ability to test it.
Yeah.
They weren't gonna go on to someone's property and go, because they just didn't have the revenue.
Right.
To test it.
Well, and the same thing, the DSHS has 6 people on this, right? So if there's, and we'll get to that, how many retail, there's 7,000 retail hemp licenses. They can't police all that.
Right.
So trust me, there's more than 7,000 retail stores selling at some degree, but they just don't have, and that came up a lot in the Senate hearing, they don't have the manpower. The police don't have the manpower to test it. They're not, I spoke to a policeman and he said, we're not arresting anyone for marijuana because, unless they're an ass, right? Unless they're pushing the envelope.
Or Colorado County.
Oh, Colorado County's really iffy about that.
Yeah.
I think they're getting worse again, but I think
Yeah, right there at Columbus, right there, going on 171.
yeah, they're bad.
Not that I've
Or Bend,
experienced it, but somebody very close to me has.
Fort Bend,
My oldest boy. I got that call. I need to get out of jail.
Fort Bend, DA and the sheriff, even when they're getting Delta 8s, we're not even looking for that. And the problem is they can arrest someone certainly for suspicion of marijuana. And, we actually provide letters to say that, and our packaging all reads that. But they have to test it. So no DA is gonna, I think there's 3 labs. And DSHS says it takes them 6 months to test something. So nobody's gonna spend that kind of money to.
Not worth it.
No. But it makes it very hard on the policemen to have these 2. So industrial, again, in the manufacturing or the extracting, there's 226. This was, again, as of 2 years ago. Another thing to note, that Bayou City Hemp Company, they were one of the first and the largest extractors and wholesalers of hemp. They bought Bayou City Hemp. They bought Eighth Wonder. So if you see the Cannabis Lounge at Eighth Wonder Brewery, if you go into Specs now and you see Wonder Water, Eighth Wonder is now owned by a hemp company. And this is kind of interesting too. If you go down the middle where you see CBD only sales at 612,000, but cannabinoid sales at almost 3.1 million, because the business is not in CBD anymore. Nobody wants. Drug testing is still an issue, so a few people want CBD, but most people are definitely into the stronger. Again, industrial, wholesale distribution, 339 operators in Texas. And so it's not, right now, I think it'd be very difficult for someone to come in and try and do this just because we're in such this uncertain times. So I'm gonna spend more time again on retail because I think that these get much more complicated. One of my suppliers is the one out of Austin. He did move his facility to Oklahoma. So there's been a lot of movement there right over the border to basically do what we're doing. And then again, note that Specs is now carrying infused beverages, Wonder and others. And we've seen a lot of customers come in saying that they didn't want to drink alcohol anymore. They didn't like how it made them feel. And so, but they still wanted to kind of hang and be social. So I was driving on 59 last week, and there's a big sign for specs, and it's basically, it says chillax, and then it says we sell infused beverages. They don't say THC, let's push it a little too far. I want to say that word or those initials, but they're now selling.
The wages, how are they coming, and I know it's trivial, $22 an hour for wages?
So again, this was done by an independent that someone paid a lot of money for, but this would be in wholesale and distribution. So you're talking about salespeople.
Yeah, because, going to
I can send you.
to dispensaries, and I've been to a few, those people aren't making 20, they're probably getting free
No,
samples.
yeah, this is still wholesale, we're not in
Work
retail.
for $5 an
Yeah,
hour,
no,
free sample.
that's why I don't have anybody else, my husband and I, because I can't afford a person that I want in the store for lots of reasons. So retail, so, this is saying 4468, but in that Senate hearing on May 29th, the DSHS said that there are over 7,000 retail hemp licenses in the state of Texas, and they can't handle it. But again, at that point in time, it was a $3.3 billion business 2 years ago, and that was way before a lot of the THCs, a lot of the other things, before Eighth Wonder was making cannabis water. So it's that numbers would be probably double. Again, if the hemp retail license is almost doubled. So if you are working with someone, and I'll get to that, when that is a tenant, they have to have a hemp retail license. I would highly suggest it, but again, there's only 6 people, so chances are it'll take them 6 years to find it. This is interesting too. So in retail, so you can see retail smoke shop, CBD store, vape store, dispensary, and gas station. It kind of breaks it down by how much volume each is doing. The retail vape store, 1.7. It's the highest. They're kind of all over the place. One thing about vape stores that if hemp were made legal, they could pivot. Where it'd be harder for a CBD store to do that, or a dispensary to pivot to something else. So again, a lot of landlords are probably going to be very leery of for lots of reasons, but one in general is that this business may get taken away.
How is the retail business taxed and stuff like
It's
that?
just sales tax.
Is it sales?
Just sales tax. And I think we don't mind additional, but in states where marijuana is legal, let's take Colorado, for example. Here a hemp license is a couple $100. Colorado, it's $5 to $20 grand, depending on your operation. Illinois, which they're always broke, is over $100,000. So you're going to, and we'll get to marijuana being legal.
Have I missed the part about weed?
Yeah, we're still talking about it.
Get it right now.
Legal.
Well, I'll stick around for a minute.
Legal weed. So, and Ricky's blocking it, but this was interesting. I just learned this. So we'll talk about how hard it is to find space for tenants now. But Washington Ho, which is a retail developer in Houston, he was also had a TV show, so he's kind of a reality guy. I was watching the Senate hearing, and he's there, and he's with Bahama Mama. So if you're wondering why Bahama Mamas are popping up still all over the place, it's because there's a big commercial guy that's backing them. And he also partnered with Tony Busby, the attorney, and they created a drink called Ho Buzz. So there's a lot of people with a lot more money and a lot more at stake than me. I'm very happy about that because they'll fight the fight. So you can see Bahama Mama, you can kind of see what they look like. Vape City, you can kind of see what they look like, and then
What's the one in the middle?
beautiful store in the middle that is at the front of Siena and caters to the affluent people in Siena, the 40 to 60-year-olds.
A bunch of
The
stuff.
soccer moms and they're so.
Hippie stoners.
So this is my favorite story lately. So this bottle is a cannabis spirit that actually Eighth Wonder is now bottling that. Mick Jagger was in town for the Rolling Stone show, and apparently he nicknamed it, he had 3 Tranquilitas. Again, they started to bottle that, so instead of using tequila, they use a cannabis spirit. So, and if anybody wants some, I do sell that. and it is followed by Eighth Wonder. So again, so helping your clients navigate. So here's kind of my little checklist. I probably missed 15 things, but if you really have a client that is looking to get into the space, number one, warn them that it's it's stressful every time the Texas legislature goes into session, but it's not the easiest to do right now. They need to have strong financials. So it's very difficult for a cannabis company to get a loan. It is still considered high risk, even CBD. So there's the big banks are not allowed to participate in this kind of business. The SAFER Act has been in Congress, I don't know for how many years. It finally went to the Senate, but it has not moved. So it's very, very difficult to get any kind of funding. So they just have to have all those financials up front. If it's a brand new, if they're opening a new business. Most landlords, I think, will take like Bahamas or where there's money and people
Strong
behind that.
financial back.
Yes. Write a business plan. This just happened to me. I'm working with a guy that wants to open up, he actually wants to open up a dispensary in Midtown, and they wanted a business plan. They wanted to make sure it wasn't a vape store that sold that crappy Delta 8 stuff, or they wanted it to be higher end. They wanted it to attract a certain clientele. Create a parent company LLC, and why this is important is the next line. A lot of banks, I had Wells Fargo and Chase shut me down. That was 4 years ago. So it's very, very difficult. So you need a lot of planning up front because you need to get virtual processing if you want to take credit cards. If you want to take cash, and that's why you see some stores have a security guard because, or an ATM is because they can't give banks. You must apply for a retail hemp license with Texas Department of Health Services, State Health Services. Make sure, and these are kind of things that'll keep all of us out of trouble, but specifically if you have a tenant that wants to do this, get merchandise that's third-party tested, that is not made in someone's bathtub. You want all of those. You want COAs. You want your customers, or their customers, to know this stuff is legitimate. It's not going to hurt them. It'll say exactly how much of each cannabinoid is in there.
Ketchup in Mexico is not good.
No. And the COAs, that's really important now with the smokables. Provide letters to law enforcement if you're selling flour. I did have a customer that got pulled over by the police in Siena because he had opened up a bag he bought from me and it was just laying there. The policeman did let him go, but you want to provide, your client would want to provide letters that say, this is under the 2018 Farm Bill, this is hemp, and it's federally legal and legal in the state of Texas. Age gate, this is something that that was all over that hearing, was everybody said we don't sell to kids. It's 21 and up. I mean, there is no law, there's no regulation that says that, I mean, a kid could come and buy it. It's not 18. I mean, smokable is 21, but smokable hemp is banned in Texas. So there's no, and we're all like, yes, please regulate that. Don't throw a huge tax like alcohol on top of it, but regulate that. Have your suppliers, or if you're going to do white label, I'm saying you, but your client, do kid-proof packaging and don't sell kid-friendly packaged products. There's a lot of things that look like, there's gummies, right? They look like candy. So that's one thing that, again, everybody said during the hearing, all the main players, was that they were going to change their packaging to make sure that it didn't target kids. Be able to educate and protect the consumer. I hear that a lot, saying, I went into a store, I thought I was getting CBD and I got Delta 8. I thought I was getting Delta 8, I got Delta 9. I bought this and I put myself in the emergency room. Because again, there's probably kids that are selling that. They're just there to sell it and they're not explaining. We'll spend 30 minutes, an hour with our customers talking about the good, bad, and ugly. And if you take too much of something, you're not going to like it. So I would strongly suggest that your clients definitely have that education. We have brochures. We say, ask me anything, but again, we'll sit and talk.
And at one time, you were doing a public service to your clients and you were self-testing everything. Are you still doing that?
I sell, not as much as my husband does. We have two different levels of tolerance.
But you can watch it and you can.
Oh, yeah,
speak from experience.
I'll ask him sometimes, hey, what'd you try today? So, yeah. Pay attention to both the feds and the Texas legislature. That is, there's things coming up in 2025 that are gonna impact this, three things, for sure. So you gotta pay attention. If you have a tenant right now, they're like, I wanna get in this business, I would tell them to wait a year. I would tell them to wait till we get through next spring, because again, there's gonna be some things that are gonna happen. I mean, my first lease is up April 30th, so I'm gonna be in this gray pattern or this gray area because the legislator doesn't get out till May 31st. And I gotta tell my landlord, 60 days, so we might have to do a month to month, because basically what is on, now this is just the Senate, the House hasn't said anything, no, the governor hasn't said anything, but it has to go through committees and a lot, I mean, it's not going to be an easy thing, but, yeah, it would basically take just about.
Does the TABC get involved with it?
Who?
TABC.
No.
So like that, there they drink, they're not involved
No,
with it?
no, because it's not alcohol. So, yeah, so it's just, I mean, now Specs has to have a hemp license, but, yeah.
So who's the monitoring force of that? Or who
The
monitors?
the DSHS,
Okay.
yeah, so they are the police of controlled substances in Texas. So even though the agricultural department help, but all the licensing, because they're a consumer protection agency, so everything goes through them for licensing. Be patient, because if they do decide, it's gonna get stressful. It's not like a regular business. Again, I didn't know any of this 5 years ago when we were talking about it, so learned a lot. And I say this like funny, but I'm not. I have a cannabis attorney on speed dial. There's some not so good players out there. There have been some raids on stores like mine, not exactly like mine, more so in the Dallas area.
You got raided?
No.
Oh.
No.
Selling-
Please, the police come in. They come
Selling
in.
marijuana?
The police come in.
Delta 8.
Well, the reason they're not just going in and busting down a neighborhood CBD store. They're watching somebody. They're doing some shady stuff. They're either selling to kids or they're not. They're selling what they call hemp, but it's not. And one thing about one of the compounds, for the last year has been like the hottest thing is THCA, which looks like marijuana, smells like it. It's hemp flower, but this compound in there, it's a precursor to Delta 9, so once you light it, it converts. So basically, I do have things in my store that a joint or a bag of flower that once you light it, it becomes marijuana. But that's after someone leaves my store, and that's there on them. So the other thing is, because it's so freaking hot here, one of my suppliers, they weren't going to do it, because every time they got a shipment in, they tested it, it was showing more than the 0.3%. So now they're doing it now, so obviously they figured a way, but they're even saying, like, in some of the, like, I'll sit through some webinars where they'll talk about put it in the refrigerator to make sure that doesn't convert, because that's the one, if they ban anything, that's the one that they'll go after, because it really is the biggest loophole there is. All right, and if you're working with owners and landlords, I'm going to take the other side of the fence. Thoroughly vet that tenant and ask for financials and a personal guarantee, because again, if something goes south, and it could happen next year, I say that not to scare, because at first I get scared, but then I talk to my suppliers, they calm me down. It's too big of a business, and I'll talk about Florida in a second. Ask for a business plan. The landlords, people that I've talked to, they want to see a health and wellness store. They don't. A vape store, a head shop, you have a visual of who you think goes in those stores, right? I have people coming all the time, they're like, we come in here because we're not scared to go in, we're scared to go in other stores. So, fancy, make it a little nicer. And even, I carry sunglass, I don't carry a ton of it, but it's how it's presented and how, the service we kind of give to our visitors.
Okay, explain, you're using some terminology that
Sorry.
a lot of people don't
Glass.
aren't, glass and stuff like that.
So glass is like a glass pipe.
Right,
a water bomb,
For your crack.
accessories.
So you can take in dealing with assuming that we get past next spring and everything is calm, you could take your previous slide and flip it for the landlord.
Yeah.
And say, you wanna look for the proper licenses, you wanna look for this, you wanna look for that, to calm and delay any fears that your landlord may have. The more, it's like anything, the more you educate,
Yeah.
the less fear factor is gonna be.
Well, we I don't like the guy very much, but I spent 3 hours with a leasing agent and my client and I educated him on, because it was all that fake stuff, this stuff is fake, I don't like that Delta 9, I like the real stuff. I'm like, so you mean you like, so it was very interesting. Deed restrictions or proximity to schools or learning centers, I mean, just, again, there's no law, right? So that's the challenge with hemp, and we all, again, legitimate businesses want protection against kids. So don't know if that's gonna come up, but my guess is that probably will be, it'll be like an alcohol thing, so just kind of watch that. Require higher liability and business interruption insurance. I wouldn't let any tenant in this business without that.
What is the restriction?
There isn't.
That's what she's saying.
Yeah, there's
It's the
one that-
Wild West.
There's one that opened up across the street from Stratford High School, within the last
Well,
6
alcohol is
months.
like 500 feet, right? So but there's no, oh, you mean a vape store?
Yeah,
Yeah, no, there's no,
yeah, brand new store,
and
and
that's,
it kind of is an oxymoron with what you're saying, is they are catering to kids. Start them young and get them, Down.
I would say some of the there's bad seeds, and everybody at that hearing, acknowledge that. Those are the ones we don't want to have licenses, so if you have to increase the license, again, paying $100,000 for a marijuana license is going to put a lot of small business in Texas out of business, because that's not something they can afford. Bahama Mama will be fine, Big City will be fine. And then closely follow the feds, the Texas legislature, and other states. Other states, this is interesting, and at that hearing, it was very clear that the marijuana people are fighting the hemp people, because we're doing everything they want to do, but they have to pay more money for it, and they're making less. So Florida, they were in legislative this past spring, both their houses voted to ban all hemp cannabinoids, or hemp-derived cannabinoids, and DeSantis vetoed it. And he came out publicly and said he vetoed it because it was the small business, it would hurt the small business people, it would hurt the employees of those businesses, which is true, because their business. I talked to one of my suppliers, and what his real reason was, or what they said is he does not want marijuana legal in the state of Florida, so he needs hemp lobbyist money. So, and the supplier that I talked to, I'm like, how much, because again, they're lobbying all over the country. I'm like, how much money did you give to DeSantis' campaign or his anti-marijuana campaign? So right now we are, hemp has been battling alcohol and pharmaceuticals for a very long time, and now all of a sudden it's really marijuana is the biggest threat to the hemp business. Again, 2 years ago it was an $8 billion business in Texas. Okay, so some of these you probably are thinking this, so I'm just gonna go through them quick, I'll answer them, and I may not be able to answer these questions if you've got more, because I know it's overwhelming. In the past few years, smoke shops have been popping up all over the place. How come? Because they all think marijuana is gonna be legal shortly, very soon, and they want to be able to get a marijuana license. Every state that's gone legal, they just start handing them out to everybody. You have to have a existing location to be able to get a marijuana license. Why are landlords hesitant to lease to hemp stores, and how do I help my client find a space? It's very difficult now. It was hard 4 years ago. I had to do a business plan. I think it's harder now because there were so many businesses that came in waiting or hoping for marijuana to be legal that didn't have the money, the financial backing, so they fell through on their lease. So landlords are a little bit more conservative, I think, than they were 4 years ago. Now, there's still some that don't care, but again, as we talked about, if I were a landlord, make sure that there's a personal guarantee. Smokable hemp is banned in Texas. How are shops selling it? because retailers can still sell it. Texas can't manufacture it or distribute it, but as retailers, we can sell it. So basically, I can get it from out of state and it's totally fine.
So it's a production thing. In Texas.
Yes, it was, the original ban was retail as well, but again, it was so silly because it just couldn't be marketed. I could still have it, I could still sell it, and I could say, please don't smoke it, but make cookies out of it, bake,
Brownies.
brownies, yes. Is THC legal in Texas? Yes, it is, as long as it is less than, it's Delta 9, it's less than 0.3% by dry weight. Now, what suppliers have done is they'll take a gummy and they'll make it heavy. They'll put more sugar in it, it'll make it bigger, and they can put recreational strength THC in a gummy that anybody in this room could buy and take. I don't recommend taking a high dose if you haven't done it before, but it is legal as long as it's under the 0.3%. That's why that law is, whoever wrote it, and of course Texas just copied it. Surely they knew there were 100 other cannabinoids in that plant, and more than one is psychoactive. Is there an age limit on CBD or hemp-derived cannabinoids? There is not, and that's a problem, because it is an intoxicant, and it should not be, should not be given to anyone under the age of 21. Why are stores selling weed? Because we can. Again, it is hemp flower with a high concentration of, or high percentage of THCA. That is the precursor to Delta 9. When they harvest the plant, it is not psychoactive. Once you decarb that THCA, it converts to Delta 9, and all you have to do to decarb it is light it. So that's the biggest loophole, and that will be, even the DEAs, that's been the thing. Why do we need hemp stores? That should be in Texas, not is, when we have medical marijuana. So there is a medical marijuana program in Texas called TCUP. Compassionate Use Compassionate Use Program. It's very expensive, and there's only about 3 dispensaries. One just opened up in Sugar Land. You have to have a prescription, and it's like Thursdays from like 2 to 4. So it's not easy. A lot of veterans, is when they were trying to ban Delta 8, the veterans were showing up and they were challenging them as why they weren't taking advantage of that. That's why I said it's too expensive. I had a lady come in with a prescription for 5 milligram gummies, 5 milligram THC, 5 milligram CBD for $60. I think there were 20 of them in there. I have the same thing for $20. So teacup is kind of a disaster. And let's see, why do some CBD stores have ATMs? Because they can't get a merchant processor, so they have to take cash. You don't see it as much anymore. If you go to Colorado, if you go to legal states and you're wondering why, or in Las Vegas, why there's all this false security, it's because it's a cash business. And so it's so, the banks need to step up, because it's not safe, obviously, when you're dealing with that amount of money. Just other ones, will marijuana ever be legal in Texas? Yes, someday, but probably not until it's legal federally. And I'm not so sure I need it to be legal, because it comes with a whole bunch more of things on top of it. What is a Schedule I controlled substance, and is that what marijuana is? Okay, so I know that there's a lot of talk about rescheduling, and I'll kind of hit on that. So Schedule I, marijuana, heroin, fentanyl are all Schedule I's. To be a Schedule I, it cannot have any, or doesn't have any medical benefits, and it's addicting. Fentanyl wasn't a Schedule I until a year ago. So, we have medical marijuana, so we know it has medical benefits. So why haven't they rescheduled already, right? So that's what they're working on federally, is rescheduling that. What is the impact on hemp? If there's a federally rescheduling marijuana, there really isn't much. There would be something, but really not much of an impact, because it's still illegal. Marijuana would still be illegal. The hemp business is still kind of what it is. I've heard that CBD is good for pain and anxiety. Will it get you high? No, CBD won't get you high. It's not psychoactive. Will I fail a drug test if I take CBD or THC? Yes. I do tell everybody that. It's a high possibility. If you take a full spectrum CBD, it means it has everything that was in that plant, and there's a trace of THC, so you could fail a drug test. THC, anything Delta 8, Delta 10, you take it, one gummy probably not, but if you take it consistently or, yeah, there's a pretty good chance you're gonna fail that. So that's, again, another dilemma, right? I mean, you can't go to work drunk, you shouldn't go to work high either. Is Delta 8 synthetic? A lot of talk about Delta 8 before. You're not gonna hear much about it because it's kind of a moot point now because of Delta 9, because we can do so much with Delta 9 that nobody really cares about it. It is not synthetic. It is found naturally in the plant. It's just at really small amounts. So a biochemist decided that he could take CBD and convert it to Delta 8 and make lots of gummies out of it. And so it's synthesized, but it is found naturally in the plant. There are a couple things that the DEA took off the shelf, and those are THCOs, and those are made in the lab. We were selling them for a while, and then they came back and said, sorry, I can't do that. Are Texas and federal government trying to ban hemp-derived cannabis? Yes, they both are. Again, will they? Hopefully not. It's much more difficult 2 years later because it's such a big business, both in Texas and federally. Not saying they won't. There was one senator that he was really trying. But this is my third legislative session, and this will be the third time that we get nervous, and they've been trying to do that. Federal government, again, there was, so they're relooking at the Farm Bill. What they did was they put a bunch of amendments that Illinois representative added that, and they just did like a mass vote. So everything that was in committee, they're just taking the bill 100% as is. So there is language in there also to ban this. And why is it not just all legal already? Well,
Who's ringing?
Doorbell.
Okay.
It
Who's
is.
ringing?
Steve.
Steve.
Dave.
I'm trying to be quiet.
It's
You know,
like your phone.
No, it's my, it's my computer, I'm sorry.
I'm not sure why it's not all legal already. It's, there's a lot of money in pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of money in alcohol, there's a lot of lobbyists, there's a lot of political, it still kind of falls on political lines, even though every customer that comes in, regardless of whether they're Republicans or Democrats or independents, they're like, I don't know why this isn't legal. Then I have to talk them down and say, well, okay, time out. You're going to pay a lot more for it, if marijuana becomes legal. But yeah, politics, not really sure why. Again, the rescheduling, it's going to help, but you still have to have a prescription. You could probably get it at CVS versus just a true dispensary. But it's like ketamine or some steroids where you would still need a doctor. So rescheduling it's still illegal. Better than being a Schedule 1, because Schedule 1, at a small amount is a felony, and there are people in prison right now for making a pan of brownies. And I think that's it. So that's kind of I know it's a lot, and it's if we get past this next spring, because again, that's when the Farm Bill will come back up probably in the spring, definitely Texas, that'll be in the spring. We get past that. It was interesting, I think, that DeSantis did what he did. He's kind of set a precedent. We have really good people there. They just formed a Texas Business Hemp Coalition. So if you have a client that is going to get into this, I highly recommend joining that because they're the lobbyists. There's a guy that's head of governmental affairs. He's in the Capitol quite a bit, so has a better pulse. The veterans are very pro hemp. But if we can get past again the first half of 2025, then it should be.
Well, if they got pro hemp.
Bring any samples.
Well, it's funny. I have brought some samples in the past. I just like to read the room sometimes because it's not, I'm going to be in Up Close magazine, and the woman that wrote the article was kind of like, she was listening to what I was saying, and I made a comment about, I grew up in marijuana's and drugs are bad. And there was that egg commercial, right? And she put that in there, and I'm like, no, time out. Like, I'm not ever going to convince somebody that marijuana is not a drug if that's what they believe and that's how they are. And that's just, I can educate on what my customers say. So I learned my lesson one time on the samples, so I'm a little bit. Though I was gonna bring like the flower to show you that it looks, smells, feels,
I just wanted to see if I wanted to give up my pot or not.
well, well, here's the thing, I can bring you some stuff and you know that it's not laced and you don't have to get it, my customers come in, this is better than we get from the guy.
I've got a question, the stuff that's heated.
Yep.
I mean, what is that's causing I mean, to me, that's kind of, how do you know it's just not fentanyl? It's not a cannabinoid, and if you light it, it's sort of like crack.
No, it's
I mean-
tested, they're all tested, and it's got like a 20, upwards 20, I have some 27, 30% THCA. It
So
is
it
a,
converts over to THC.
Correct.
Okay.
CBD heated, that's again, a lot of suppliers took CBD in bulk and turned it into Delta 8 by heat.
And you don't think marijuana is a drug or isn't a drug?
Marijuana is a plant. Now, that's not what I learned growing up, but it is a plant. It does have cannabinoids that are psychoactive. It will get you high if that's what you want. One thing we tell people is with my customers, again, I've got, the sweet spot is 40 to 60 year olds. But I had an 80-year-old lady come in and she was eating CBD gummies, and up the counter, we've got some more recreational stuff, and she grabbed one. She's like, "What is this?" And I told her, and she put it, and I took it and I put it back. Like, we're not, we're not gonna start there. But I wrote a letter for the hearing about a customer that comes in, and he's a veteran, his wife's a veteran. She has stage 4, I'm not sure what. But he came in one day, and he comes in a lot, but he found a gummy, a recreational strength one that helps her sleep. And this was about 2 months ago, and he came in, and I could just tell like his whole demeanor was different. And so he picked his stuff up, came to the counter, and he said, "We got some bad news today." I'm like, "I'm sorry." And he's like, "At least I know she's gonna sleep tonight." And so it is helping people. However, whatever you believe or don't believe, that's on you. There's research, again, they couldn't research it until 2018 and 2019. A lot of research coming out. You can Google any of this. You have an endocannabinoid system with receptors, so your body does naturally produces things similar to what is in the cannabis plant.
There's a difference between the CBD, the one that they were using for epilepsy. There's
CBG.
Which one was?
CBG is the stem cell for all of the cannabinoids. That actually, and then CBD. Again, I don't tell anybody that comes in the store that anything is, like the FDA says I can't say it does anything. I talk about what our customers are, but there has been research on seizures. My vet, he sent someone in for their
which
pet.
kind is the one they're using? That's where I'm.
So
CBD?
CBD and CBG. But again, either plant has both in them, right?
They still have everything.
Yeah.
aside.
The plant was meant to all work together. All the cannabinoids work better when they're together. So if you ever see a live rosin or a live resin or a full spectrum or 1-to-1 CBD, THC, they're helping each other out.
So take the one that has everything.
Just cut it in half or cut it in quarters.
Yeah.
Or use your glass pipe.
Huh?
Use your glass pipe.
Use your glass pipe.
How about the National Institutes of Health did studies on the efficacy of THC and marijuana back in the 90s?
Right. Like
And
there
they
was
knew, there
were
was
certain.
then
Well,
that it had positive effects.
yeah, they knew. But you didn't see the mass testing, right? Like the universities and yeah, they've known for
Decades.
They've known for a long time. There's now you can go on Netflix and watch a bunch of different documentaries on why it became a Schedule 1 to begin with.
It was first banned when? The 30s?
Later than that.
That's when they made Reefer Madness,
So they made
What?
the movie. Did y'all ever see that movie back in the day, in high school? Reefer
I never saw
Madness.
Reefer Madness. Dazed
Sorry.
and Confused was more.
You would know that, yeah. It was definitely anti, it it was like a weird movie that they showed in high school.
Yeah, big old
Okay.
Barney
Yeah,
Gum
like
and
a
I.
damn
It was like very, yeah, it was very anti.
Oh, like a
when it-
scare, like
It's
a
called Reefer
scare, yeah.
Madness, yeah, it's called Reefer Madness.
Yeah, I mean, that freaking A.
It's kind of like when you
Flying,
would take your
flying.
driving test or whatever driver's ed, it was always these people that died on the side of the road or whatever, and they showed you scared the crap out of you. Remember that? You don't remember seeing those?
So,
Their own special twist on.
You know what I mean? Don't drink and drive.
So basically, if we pat our foot until the
I
spring,
never smoked.
we're gonna know which way the wind blows.
We have a better idea, yeah.
I was smoking while I saw
I
it.
think it's gonna be very difficult just
I was
because
doing
it's out
both.
of the revenue.
Drinking
I
and
mean,
smoking.
you know, and again, I was very happy with this Hannah's, because I think that, you know, every time a state does something, then every other state uses it as precedent, right? So, but it's quite stressful, actually.
No doubt.
So you can always, you know, I'm sure when we start getting closer, there's gonna be some more hearings. I didn't go to that one, though I could have. But they'll, you know, just talking to them, there'll be more on that. And it's really, what was loud and clear was the kids thing. I mean, the kids, which again, everybody's totally agree with. But one senator came on, he's like, we basically, you know, because I think the intention, again, somebody should have read that bill to know, or do a little research on the plan, but when they made it legal, surely somebody knew that there was more than one thing that would get people high or intoxicated. Or they just didn't care, or they did know, but they can still save
Well, I
face with
think if you're-
pharmaceuticals.
I think if you're good in government, you've got to look at the two functions. You've got to look at how much is the state going to make, or what's their share of the pie, first
Yeah.
and foremost. And then going up against the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, you can always go, and I'm sure they're doing a lot of pushback to the legalization for sure, because that takes away from people who want to deal with pain than to smoke. They can smoke, and it's probably a lot better for you than to take, you know, Oxycontin.
Yeah. There was, I mean, the one, when there was a hearing going on about when the state tried to ban the Delta 8 thing, there was a veteran that testified, and he said, you know, I wasn't addicted to Oxycontin, but I was dependent on it. And, you know, they've got gummy machines in DFW, or in DFW halls. But, so when the veterans are behind it, we give a 20% veteran
That's
discount.
not what pose that motion right now. She's got a question.
Yeah.
What's the difference between addicted and
Dependent.
dependent?
Addicted is when
Wanna
you're,
push a man?
huh?
What?
What?
No.
What?
What'd you say?
He's being a male.
It's kind of like when people say that you can get addicted to marijuana. It's not like an opioid where your body, like your body can't function, your body shuts down. Marijuana's gonna be more head, right?
Because isn't anything that's derived from an opioid is not a plant as well? It comes from the poppy plant. As opposed to when he asked,
Mm-hmm.
marijuana is a plant. It's not a drug, right?
But I think,
But the component from.
yeah, I don't
But you have
know
to
how,
burn it in order for you to get the effect.
I don't know how they make opioids, so I don't know.
Comes from a poppy plant. You know that.
Poppies.
Yeah.
I know my aunt failed a drug test after eating poppy
That's
seed
it.
bread, so.
Yeah, that's an
Yes.
urban myth.
Yes, really will.
Mhm.
Yeah, you will.
Yeah, if you eat like that poppy seed dressing that's delicious, yeah, be careful if you're gonna get drug tested.
Or bagel.
That's right.
Or a bagel, that's
What is it
right.
called?
With
The
an
one that has
addiction,
everything.
you're gonna have.
Everything. ET.
Yeah.
CET that
With an
Your
addiction.
body,
makes you
yeah.
phone home.
But it depends,
ET.
if you're dependent on something. Okay, if it helps you to get
Through the day.
through the day, or it helps you sleep. But it's not a situation where if you stop it, that your body's gonna go into all kinds of weirdness, like the DTs, you know, when people are addicted to alcohol and stuff like that.
But they're kind of trying to make it that way. What's the information Harold's, the CBD that they do, Harold's, I think it is, or Harrelson's? Yeah, I take some, it makes me, I can get my stuff done through the day. I just can't open my eyes to do it, but I'm getting it done through the day.
Yeah, I
You know, it
mean,
makes me feel good.
you gotta research, and you have to just make sure whatever you're ingest, I mean, in most cases, oh, you're either smoking or you're ingesting it. You gotta make sure you know what's in it and
Know what to put in your body.
right, and that's kind of what, for retailers, our responsibility to make sure that we're doing that and we're protecting our consumer. I mean, I will tell someone, if you take too much of that, you are not going to be,
Well, the big thing
Happy
is if
about
they're working and they have drug tests, they've got to take that into account.
Yep.
Because
that's, we
that
we
will-
have that, that's
will
the
nail you.
first, that's the second question we ask. First is, what are you looking for? If they, and the second question is a drug test an issue.
Yeah, because I've.
What about psychedelics? Do you sell those?
I do have some psychedelics.
Is there some special licensing for that?
There's not. Because there's two legal mushrooms. Which psilocybin is actually a Schedule 1. These are not that.
Oh, really?
That's
So
coming
this
on
one going
strong
out
to
the
the
county yard
psychedelics.
This weekend after a good rainstorm.
Don't need to. We just have to go to
Melody's, that's right, hang out
It
there.
was right there on the screen. It
He
says-
hang out at
knows
Serenity.
It's a
he
beautiful
knows that I
Yeah,
sell
hang out
them.
there.
It's not a big part of my business, but it's definitely a growing one.
I think Philippe can run your store when you're going. He knows quite a bit.
You should.
Not good.
I probably can't afford a
There's-
That's for sure.
There's been a lot.
I've had people, and I've had people ask that, because we are different, right? We're not, I would not probably do well on I-10, I mean,
But there has been in recent, a lot of studies with the mushrooms. I mean, Rick Perry is huge behind that, dealing with PSTT, is it?
PTSD.
PTSD, yeah. He's doing, Latrell is also real big on for handling those, and a lot of studies coming.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement.
I
into
wonder why
mushrooms.
they can't get the same for the, maybe they're linking it to the veterans.
I think it's still pretty new. Again, we keep pushing the envelope, and so I think it's not gonna fall under hemp, and it's just, but it's not huge yet, but you're definitely seeing people now doing honey, and, I mean, we do gummies, but it's definitely moving, but it's not huge yet. It's not replacing THC, that's for sure.
Using honey what?
They'll put mushrooms, make a honey with mushrooms, so it's gonna be a little bit psychedelic, but it's in honey.
Okay. Keep my bees away from this.
If you look at, it's Colorado
It's
hemp, Colorado honey hemp, they're starting to do a lot of honey with, I mean, they were doing CBD, then THC, and now mushrooms, yeah.
So does anybody have questions?
We're gonna have random
Very
drug tests here
interesting,
tonight.
thank you.
See who fails.
Absolutely. Will
Random
you-
drug test.
Will you keep us posted?
Yeah.
As things change?
Yes, you'll see it on my
Because-
face, you'll see it on my.
Well, as when, this coming spring, if it looks like things are gonna improve or stabilize, for issues going forward, it has some pretty broad, impact.
Yeah.
On commercial, whether it's land use, is it, land use as well as the retail.
Yeah.
And
Well,
everything
and
else.
even the wholesaling and the industrial, I just think that there has to be a clearer path right now, because otherwise it'd be too pricey. Again, one of my biggest guys, he moved his warehouse to Oklahoma, just because it's. Yeah, I
Well,
hear
they
ya.
put to reservation land. I mean, that's what I'm almost thinking now with the growing is really the safest place would be reservations land. You don't see any commercial growers on 3,000 acres, it's nothing.
Yeah.
So they could start possibly growing it in Texas.
Well, they're already
Yeah,
Yeah,
growing.
they're already growing.
They're already growing in Texas. I mean, Colorado is still, and Oregon's still for CBD, also for hemp and marijuana, they're still some of the bigger states, but there's, again, it's obviously there's some issues making it more difficult to grow it in Texas, I think. So if some of those restrictions were to come off, but we have to just, again, get through.
You can have a commercial niche. Commercial
Yeah, I mean, well,
real
it's
estate niche.
But I found this guy, he's like, yeah, he told me he loved me because he's actually could be my son, maybe grandson. But because I know what he's going through, right? And so I'm actually the one that told him, I said, the Senate's having a hearing, and he was out of town or something, so he didn't get that. So he actually drove to Austin, and he was one of the last speakers. So it's like 9:30, and then I'm snapping a picture of him. So, yeah.
Cool.
Or every time somebody said something.
Have they done a study for how much the density that you can have retail operations in with, I mean, if someone wanted to open a shop next to yours, is there a density to work? Because like
Yeah.
Washington State, they're all over the place, but not in this real burbs. I mean, the real burbs, you'll see one or two stores.
So that's interesting. Most landlords would only want one, so I think it would be more up to the landlord. However, I am talking to somebody that has so my client really wants to do a true dispensary. Like he's gonna have some gummies and stuff, but he really is selling. You're coming in and you're saying, what flower do you want? He's got flower in jars. And so it would be
But
like.
density from one store to the next, like
Well,
a C-stores, you can have corners that are ideal.
Right, I guess my point, where I was going on that is that one landlord, there's already a vape store there, but they would entertain him. Now, I'm sure
It's
that
totally different.
it is, but there's still,
Similar, but
you're,
it's different.
right,
Yeah.
but I think, in most cases, they kind of loop all of us.
Yeah. they're
Together.
together.
Yeah.
I would think there are more checks in place in
Yes.
than a vape shop, so.
Well, yeah, he's
somewhat more comfortable.
yeah, he's the security part for him is gonna be, he did have actually, he's up on 1960, he had a crash and grab during the storm.
Yeah, you definitely put the bars up,
Yeah.
even at the ones up in Washington, they all have those automatic locks if they have to.
Yeah, that's what he's,
You ain't
yeah,
going out, you ain't getting away.
Yeah.
You're gonna try and do a snack, you ain't getting away.
yeah. We don't, again, we do a decent flower business now, but it's not, most of my customers, they like the gummies, they like edibles, or they're liking the drinks, they're liking the, because there's no hangover the next day, you don't feel. And if you do, and we really sell a lot more low dose than probably those stores do, right? That are truly medicinal, or just take the edge off without the intoxication of it. So I sell a lot of 5 and 10 milligrams.
See, I think you could buy 100 milligram drinks up in Las Vegas.
You can now. Originally they capped it at like 10 in Vegas, but now I think Nevada took that off. But that would be something.
Crazy.
That would be the thing that if so, I can sell a 50 milligram
Which is
Delta
strong.
9. It's very strong. I can sell that now. Once it's legal in Texas, Texas could come and say you can only sell 5 milligrams. That they're going to put those kind of parameters on it. The kid thing, great. Higher, put a tax on it, fine. But when that's the problem, or that's what we're worried about, is that once that happens, then they're going to say you can only, you have to cap it at this. So.
And then your inventory changes.
Yeah.
Major.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, it's 4:15, so we went just a little bit over, but not really, because we didn't start until 8 minutes after. So, we have the Pine meeting coming up on the 21st, I think. We also have Paul Carver, I believe that is his name. He is the title attorney with Infinity Title. He's one of the owners with Infinity. He's going to be coming on the 20th, which is one of the afternoon sessions like today. And he's going to be doing we may move that one into the training room, because he's going to be doing some of the horror stories with regard to commercial and how some of the legal aspects of estates, LLCs, the impact on LLCs with death, divorce, and taxes and all of that stuff. Okay? But gearing it towards commercial. So there. You have client development coming up this coming Friday. Hint, hint, Steve, client development Friday. So, So there you go. Done.
Thank you.
Bye, Ricky.
Take it over.
Thank you, Melanie.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Ricky.
Same to you.
This will get posted. It is automatic, it's set to automatically record. So it'll get put on the YouTube link, okay, that I sent out earlier, and I can send it out again.